Like, where is it coming from? It's $7 billion. It must be coming from somewhere if you believe money is a real thing. And you're here to tell us how you're going to spend $7 billion of it. Clearly, you'd be able to tell us where you're getting it. You're asking for us here in Parliament to vote for this $7 billion.
Point of order.
Oh, yeah. Gang, what's up? Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. I got a sunburn today. I was mowing the lawn. Well, I've got a crazy video to show you right here. This is from December 2021. COVID times, masks, it's ridiculous. The chair has a pamper on his face. December 2021, heated committee meeting between Pierre Poilievre, Chrystia Freeland. She can't answer who's going to foot the bill for $7 billion for this ludicrous act. $7 billion, right on us. Hindsight 2020, they should have seen it coming. Pierre Poilievre did. He calls it right here. Let's take a peek. This is awesome to watch. I'm approaching 30,000 subscribers. Help a brother out, smash that subscribe. Let's get into this. It's wild. Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
Conservatives, Mr. Poilievre, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Minister. Will Canada face a housing crash?
I don't think that it is wise for anyone with economic responsibility to make predictions about what's going to happen. But what I do want to say is what is very imprudent
point of order,
and actually very irresponsible
point of order. Sorry,
is to speculate.
Point of order?
Yes?
Sorry, I just want to clarify, is there not a conventional agreement that the length of the answer will be equivalent to the length of the question?
Well, we have to allow the minister the opportunity to answer the question. The minister was answering the question.
Yeah.
But
so I would like clarity.
Yeah.
I'd like some clarity on that, just so that we're all aware.
Point of
what
order.
the conventional agreement would
Point
be.
of order on the point of order. There is usually not a conventional agreement.
In my years, I've been here over
13
years. There actually is
Point of order.
conventional understanding.
The minister has all the right to answer the question.
Point of order. Just to be clear on that point, there is a convention. I can quote the great Liberal chair, Wayne Easter, on that point, who said, I call it, each member's allocated so much time. We will stick to 6 minutes for a first round and 5 for a second round for questions and answers. As for the process, if there is an 8-second question, we expect the answer to be 8 seconds. So that is a convention. It is practice in all committees, including Committee of the Whole yesterday. So witnesses are entitled to make opening speeches, and then we move to questions.
Mr. Chair, can we ask the clerk whether there's a convention here? Whether you can weigh in?
Clerk?
It is to the chair's discretion, and so I would say that the minister, you have the right to
Diaper
answer
on
the
his
question.
face.
And I do not believe a question could be asked in 2 seconds or 3 seconds, and that will not give sufficient time to answer the question. So allow the minister to answer the question.
So is the minister's answer that the minister, I guess, has given her answer?
No, the
I actually
minister
wasn't finished. I was
minister-
cut off, in fact.
All right. So the question was whether she thinks there will be a housing crash.
Yes, and so let me just say,
Yes.
I think that it is really incumbent on everyone in this committee. We're all members of Parliament. We have a higher responsibility, which is members of the Finance Committee. Mm-hmm. And to speculate irresponsibly and to make assertions that could damage confidence in the Canadian economy is highly irresponsible. So let me just assure Canadians that our housing market, that our banks are very, very stable. Our government took measures last summer to further stabilize the housing market and to ensure that Canadians were not taking undue risk. OSFI did the same thing.
Is our housing market stable today?
As I said, I have great confidence in Canada's regulators. I have great confidence in OSFI.
Stable?
I have great confidence in the prudent measures that the government and OSFI put in place last summer to ensure Canadians did not take on undue risk.
Is it stable?
And I just want to reiterate that for anyone, particularly someone from a party that aspires one day to form
Is the housing
government,
market stable?
to make
Point of
such
order, Mr. Chair.
irresponsible
No,
assertions.
point of order.
Can we please
Point of
allow-
order.
can
We
we
don't.
please
Point of order.
allow-
Ms. Derwitz?
Yes, can we please allow the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance to respond without repeating the question over and over again?
Point of order.
Point of order, Ms. Bergen.
Chair, you've ruled that you want to give the minister the ability to respond, to answer the question. I think the minister is now wading into telling opposition members how to do their job. So respectfully, I've chaired a committee before.
That's not a point of order. That's-
Bergen, it
it's
is- Ms.
absolutely
Bergen,
a point of
Ms.
order.
Bergen, what I'll say is it is very difficult with crosstalk for
It
the
is
interpreters,
difficult.
for one, for the interpreters, because I do
then
hear
you know,
from the
do your job and
So-
and I'll allocate the time accordingly, and let us get on
and
with
that
the
is
questioning.
that is what is being done, Mr. Poilievre. So allow the minister to answer, and then ask your next question, and allow the minister to answer, and then we will continue
All right.
in that format.
So we're not going to get an answer on whether the minister thinks the housing market is stable. My next question is, what is the total amount of public and private debt in Canada today?
We are going to give a full report on Canada's public finances on Tuesday, but I am happy to say that the net worth of Canadian households is up 22% from the beginning of the crisis, and that in Q3 the household savings rate was 4%.
The question is
was
total
11%
debt of
compared
Canadians
to
today.
3.4% in.
Just, sorry, Minister, just for the interpreters, it is very difficult, the
I agree.
crosstalk that happens when you interject and not allow just the finishing, at least of a sentence. So allow the
Right.
minister just to conclude her
Right.
remarks.
Well, the question was, what is the total debt level, public and private, in Canada today? Just looking for that particular number.
And I am happy to say that on Tuesday, just a few days from now, we're going to give a full public accounting. But
Right.
I am pleased also to remind the member that the savings rate of Canadians was 11% in the third quarter, up from 3.4% between 2010 and 2019.
Question for Mr. Leswick. Does he know the total debt, public and private, that exists in Canada today?
I believe that the rule is that the questions go to me here.
Is he a witness? He is a witness.
I'm
just thought
not sure.
he might have the number.
Witnesses do
Questions
have
can
the-
be posed to
they
him.
can,
Okay, Nick,
yes.
go ahead if you wish.
I apologize to the member. I don't have that number at my fingertips.
That's a pretty important number. I'm amazed that a Minister of Finance and a senior finance official would not know how much debt there is in Canada today. What would be the total cost for if there were a 1% average increase of interest rates on Canada's national debt per year? Just the number.
And here, just let me say, when we publish the economic and fiscal update on Tuesday, we will include, as we did in the budget, as we always do, downside and upside risk scenarios. And
Right.
those will include a careful accounting of
Thank you. I
the
appreciate
impact
that.
of higher
the
than
question was
expected
really
interest
how much
rates.
it would cost if interest rates went up even 1 percentage point on Canada's national debt. The minister, this is sort of a number we would expect the government to know on any given day, not to
Yeah.
have to wait for a report. So what would it cost for a 1 percentage point increase in interest rates on Canada's national debt? Just the number, please.
The information that is published in the economic and fiscal update, which will be on Tuesday, is market sensitive. We publish it all at the same time, and I have not come to this committee for an early reveal of the economic and fiscal update. But all the numbers are there,
All right.
and I do want to say,
Well,
because
that
it
is
is
based on your most
it is
recent
important-
publication.
it
Based on
is
your most recent
important to
publication,
say to
what's the number?
Canadians
Point
that
of order.
Ruling that the minister is to be allowed to answer the questions, and once again, Mr. Poilievre was not allowing the minister to answer the question.
Just decorum, Mr. Poilievre, and your time is actually up. So we are going to be moving now to the Conservatives. This is going to be our third round, members, and for 5 minutes, Mr. Poilievre.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Ms. Bergen's point about the minister's mistake when she claimed that Canada's greater risk was deflation rather than inflation. 6 months earlier, Conservatives had begun warning about the inflation threat, and yet she went out in October of 2020 when house prices were already rising. They were up 12% in half a year. Mortgage lending was ballooning, stock markets were rising, and since she made her prediction about deflation, there has not actually been a single month of deflation in Canada. In fact, now we have the highest inflation in 2 decades, and we have housing price inflation of 20% since she took office, including a 20% increase in land prices, which of course are not linked in any way, shape, or form to supply chains. Now, this mistake that she made against our warnings has great consequences, of course. Now, food prices are going to go up $1,000 this year for single mothers who can't afford to pay their bills. Young people are living in their parents' basements because they can't afford homes, something the minister was celebrating a moment ago when she thought all of this asset price inflation was a good thing. And today her only defense is, well, it's great that the stock market is up. Well, sure. For the plutocrats, that is great news. Their assets have been inflated by the minister's excessive spending and money creation, as have millionaire mansion owners in her social circles. But for working class folks who can't afford stocks or houses or bonds or other things that she's inflating, all they've got
Point of order,
is
Mr.
a
Chair.
real pay.
Is there a question in there somewhere?
No, that's not a point of order.
Yeah.
Come on.
We'll allow the member to continue.
Thank you.
So these sorts of mistakes have consequences. But I noticed that the minister used to defend her faulty prediction of deflation. She said that she was just relying on Larry Summers. Well, actually, Larry Summers made the same prediction I did, which was that deficit spending would lead to this inflation. I'll quote him. First, while there are enormous uncertainties, there is a chance that macroeconomic stimulus on the scale closer to the World War II levels than normal recession levels will set off inflationary pressures of a kind we have not seen in a generation. So if she'd even listened to a liberal economist who has been predicting that there would be inflation as a direct result of government spending and central bank money creation, then she would not have got us in the mess that she's created today. So would she agree with Larry Summers, whom she just quoted, that, in fact, deficit spending is contributing to inflation here and in the United States and in other places where governments have behaved similarly irresponsibly?
Mr. Chair, let me just start by saying that it's really important for Canadians not to be misled by a false narrative about where we are in the Canadian economy. And that is important because people's attitudes have a very real impact when it comes to our future prosperity. Confidence, animal spirits, a certainty about where we are going in the future is a very real economic factor. And so it's really incumbent on me to correct the entirely misleading impression that Canadians are being given here, which is that somehow our economic policies aren't working and that somehow our country is not doing what is in fact the case, which is we are in the midst of a really strong recovery from a really dreadful external event. The external event was a global pandemic. Our government responded at scale and appropriately. The result is GDP growing robustly, jobs all are back, strong exports, and household finances in good shape. That is a good story, and that is what Canadians need to feel confident about.
Thank you. That is your time, Mr. Poilievre.
Thank you.
We are moving now to the Liberal fourth round, and the Conservatives have the floor. Mr. Poilievre for...
I'm going to let Mr. Chambers.
Mr. Chambers for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll use the first part of the time. My honorable colleague just mentioned, who could have predicted inflation? And actually, I have a hot off the press here. Inflation warnings: May 12, 2020, June 11, 2020, June 16, 2020, June 18, 2020, July 20, 2020, November 26th, December 3rd, December 7th, December 1st. Those are all 2020. April 2021, April 27, April 29, May 6th, May 11, June 22nd in 2021. Those warnings were from my honorable colleague, Mr. Poilievre. So I'll perhaps turn the floor back to Mr. Poilievre.
Yes. So I thank Ms. Dershowitz for asking the question, and we over here actually answer questions. So we were happy to provide you with that answer. Of course, this minister has been trying to convince us Canadians that prices would drop up until October of 2020. That was actually up until last week. That was her official position. Last week she finally acknowledged that we have inflation in Canada. But today she said, "Don't worry about that, because the stock market has gone up." And of course, the stock market goes up whenever governments flood the economy with cash. They create asset bubbles, where the very rich get much richer, but then the very poor end up having to pay more as those dollars trickle down. It's one of the reasons why trickle-down economics never works, because it never trickles down. It stays with the rich at the very top, and then the people who do all the work on the ground end up paying the bills. It's interesting. The Prime Minister was once asked, what is middle class and what is rich? He said, well, middle class folks live off their income, whereas rich folks live off their assets. Well, the minister comes here today and says, well, things are great because those who live off their assets have watched those assets inflate in value by 20%. She even marveled at how the stock market had gone up so much, even though the economy is smaller today than it was before COVID. So you have a smaller economy, but a much larger stock market. So if the folks who own all the stocks are significantly wealthier, when the overall output of the economy is slightly down, that means there's less for everyone else. So, what we see here, again, is a government that is taking from the have-nots to give to the have-yachts. Sure, if you're floating around on your yacht right now, if you're planning to get back to...
I think that we are here to discuss Bill C-2, and I have some difficulty seeing how Mr. Poilievre's words are in any way related to what we as a committee are here to discuss.
If you can get to your question, and hopefully it's relevant to C2.
Yeah, and now C2 proposes another $7 billion of inflation. So it is very relevant. I just find it incredibly insulting that the day that a report comes out showing that it's going to cost an extra $1,000 for the average family to feed themselves, the government comes here today and says, well, don't worry, the stock market is up. Because frankly, the middle-class folks who are walking down grocery aisles not able to buy nutritious food because it's too expensive, they can't afford stocks right now. Their concern is putting food on the table. The 30-year-old who called me from my community of Greeley a couple weeks back to say that he's still living in his parents' basement because he can't afford a townhouse, even though he has the same job that his mother,
Mr. Chair?
entitled...
I'm very sorry to interrupt the video clip of Mr. Poilievre, but does he have a question?
Mr. Poilievre, a question. If you can get to the question, you have less than a minute left in your time. So I have a constituent who calls me. He says he has the same job his mother had,
But while she was able, happily, to buy a bungalow with that on a half-acre lot in South Ottawa, he can't even afford a townhouse today. So it's just great that the minister's friends who attend the Davos conference have seen their stock portfolios balloon after she's pumped all this cash into the economy. But the working class kids of our country are saying that their lives are worse off than their parents. You know, I asked her if we had a stable housing market. She couldn't even answer that question. There are millions of young people asking that. She likes to quote The Economist. Well, The Economist says that we, among two other countries, have a housing bubble so big it could lead to a crash on the scale of the 2008 crisis.
That is your time.
But will the minister finally start standing up for the people who do the work in this country?
We are moving to the Liberals now. Mr. Baker, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have an important question for you, Minister. But before I get to that, I can't help but respond to something that I've heard here a moment ago. Even though we know, and we know from global economists, we know from world leaders on the right and on the left, that inflation is a global problem faced by countries around the world, Mr. Poilievre says that government excessive spending has caused inflation in Canada.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
The member is quoting me. I was saying Larry Summers has said government deficits are causing inflation. That is the minister's own economic source.
It's the member's time. Mr. Baker, you have the floor.
Yeah, so you may have, Mr. Poilievre may have quoted other economists, but that he has said that. Mr. Poilievre has said that government
point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
It was actually the minister who quoted that economist, Larry Summers, as someone that inspired her thinking, not me.
Mr. Poilievre, the member, Mr. Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I hope this won't count towards my time.
It has not counted towards your time.
Thank you. So Mr. Poilievre has said that government excessive spending has caused inflation in Canada, even though we know there is a global problem acknowledged by economists, world leaders on the right and on the left. My colleague, Ms. Zarowitz, highlighted one of those economists in Stephen Poloz when he was interviewed recently and asked about that, and he said that's not right. He said, in fact, what the stimulus did was to help keep the economy from going into a deep hole in which we would have experienced persistent deflation. That was Mr. Poloz. MP Chambers highlighted that Mr. Poilievre warned about inflation a number of times, as though Mr. Poilievre is an oracle of inflation. And I look forward to hearing what other predictions he makes about the economy. But at the same time that he was issuing, the only problem with that is that at the same time as though he was issuing those warnings, he voted for that spending. So his entire caucus voted for that spending. So Mr. Poilievre's credibility on this matter, to me, is shot. And I think we should take note of the fact that on the one hand, he's saying spending caused inflation. On the other hand, he supported that spending. MP McLean said, and I quote from earlier in this meeting, we, quote, flushed $500 billion into the economy. We flushed $500 billion. I could not disagree more. Like to call the support that we provided to Canadians, like the CERB and the wage subsidy, something that we're flushing into the economy, so that Canadians would put food on the table, so that businesses could survive, and so we could avoid bankruptcies, is not only inaccurate but massively disrespectful to those Canadians.
Well, similar point of order, Mr. Chair. I don't hear his question.
We're just applying your rules.
Okay. Okay, let's find decorum and respect for all members. Mr. Baker, you have the floor.
It's part of my preamble, Mr. Chair. But I think what both Mr. Poilievre's and Mr. McLean's statements underline is what the Conservatives would have done had they been in government in response to COVID-19 to support Canadians through a pandemic. And what they would have done is nothing. So now, my question to you, Deputy Prime Minister, is in Ontario, at least, where my riding is located, cases are up. In December 7th, it was reported that new modeling from the science table there forecast a rise of 250 to 400 intensive care admissions in January, even without Omicron. The science table said case numbers count because too many Ontarians remain or under-vaccinated and will end up in hospital. And I think that's a good reminder for all of us that to work hard to make sure everyone gets the vaccines they're eligible for. And a good reminder that, as you have said, the single most, and I'm quoting you, the single most important economic policy for Canada continues to be making sure everyone who can get vaccinated does get vaccinated. So in light of this new modeling, Minister, and in light of the emergence of Omicron, what could be the potential impacts for constituents of Etobicoke Centre and businesses should the measures in C2 not be in place soon?
Look, Thank you for the question. And I do want to start by just pointing out that in the last Conservative round, no question was actually asked or no time was left for me to answer. It only leaves me to think that maybe the Conservatives are afraid of our answers. That would be surprising. And look, I want to be serious for a minute, because we're talking about the Canadian economy and we're talking about the lives of Canadians, and that is serious. And I do want to say to Canadians that we're very aware of the affordability challenges that people face. It's something that we take seriously, and it's something that we're concerned about. I also want to say that when it comes to the extraordinary measures we put in place, both to fight the coronavirus and to fight the recession it caused, it was absolutely the right thing to do. We were hit by the deepest crisis since the Second World War in terms of national emergency, and the deepest economic recession since the Great Depression. Things were bad. They could have been so much worse absent extraordinary, agile government action that put a floor under the losses and prevented economic scarring. And today, we are seeing the positive results of that emergency action. We are seeing GDP growing. We are seeing a very strong jobs recovery. We are seeing strong exports. We are seeing that the economic muscle of Canada has not atrophied, and that Canadians, Canadian families are still solvent. This is really important.
We are moving now.
Oh, yeah.
We're approaching 30,000 subscribers. Help a brother out. Hit that subscribe, smash the like, share it with somebody. People need to see that things haven't changed with the Liberal Party. What a crazy time COVID was. That's not a good look on the Liberals, is it? No, not at all. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe, showing you what legacy media won't, and also going deep into the archives to find you pieces like that. Who didn't enjoy watching that, right? Aaron, Canadian Looney, thank you very much for watching the video. We'll catch you in the next one. COVID, right? What are you gonna do? Whew. This stuff is hard to swallow. A little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching this one. I hope you found those masks as funny to watch as I did. Catch you in the next one. Better gang.